And so we move on with our conversation and welcome Miguel to our space here. Great to connect with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
Good
Miguel is, thank you so much. And Miguel is an innovator in the embodiment of divine masculinity. He's the author of Bring Him Home, a twin flame love story, workshop leader facilitating healing of divine masculine and feminine through sacred union, mentoring sessions. Pleasure to have you here once again.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. It's good to be here, and good to meet you in a virtual meeting, Jody.
Right, and so our theme today is exploring the core of sacred masculinity and femininity. So it's quite some topic, really, with so many dimensions, and it really quite interestingly weaves in with some of our previous waves and conversations that we've been having there, with the role of spirituality in our life, with our power of perception, and how we can tap into our love and unity at our deeper layers. You know, once we sort of go through our programs and layers that we have accumulated for survival, right? That somewhere at the core is that sense of connection and love. And, you know, very much it's similar with this concept of femininity and masculinity, I feel, right? And I would love us to explore what that really means, because we live in such an interesting world right now. We live in the world of gender equality. We live in the world where it's very common to talk about toxic masculinity, and it's very common to talk about, you know, the perils of patriarchy that we've been under for so many supposedly decades, right? And well, how does all of that tie in, you know, like with these deeper understandings of femininity and masculinity? Is it about gender? Is it about some energies? And is it about the classical yin and yang? So what does that really mean, right? So there are so many angles that we could explore today. So yeah, perhaps I would like to open up the floor with us diving deep into that core meaning. What sacred masculinity and femininity is really about.
I'm happy to say a little.
Please.
Okay, so sacred masculinity, yeah. For me, I guess the sacred masculine is a man that has pledged to find his way out of the labyrinth, out of the matrix, and to reclaim his full sovereignty, to remember who he is. I often equate this to, you know, the domestication of dogs, and how so much of modern man, it feels to me, is kind of has a Pekingese or a poodle sort of energy about it. And my intention is that we learn to be wolves again, and that we learn to run as a pack, and that we learn to trust each other, and to learn to work each other, to work with each other. The sacred masculine is a man who realizes that what he can comprehend with his mind is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just like a little pond, and that out beyond is an infinite ocean. The sacred masculine is a man who realizes and knows, who has embodied the truth that everything is connected, that there is no separation, that is illusion. And the sacred masculine is a man who has pledged, who has committed his life to contribution and to creating a more beautiful world, as Charles Eisenstein so poetically puts, that our hearts know is possible. So these qualities, these aspects have lain dormant, it feels, for me, within men for many centuries. We've gradually been domesticated and sort of downgraded and we've forgotten who we are. We've been programmed and conditioned and shamed and blamed, and men have been told that to be a man, you don't have emotions. So the sacred masculine is a man who's committed to making that epic journey from the head, that short distance, back to the heart, to feel again. And in order to do that, it needs great courage, because when we make that journey back to the heart, the first thing we encounter is all the trauma, all the fear, all the terror that we weren't able to fully express when we were young. So it takes commitment. It takes, at some point, there's a decision for a man who follows the path of the sacred masculine. To what extent am I here in service to live from my soul perspective, from my soul mission? And to what extent am I to live from this human ego place and just entertain my own fancies and desires? I believe there's a place for both. But what leads is a deep intention, a deep passion, a deep knowing that the reason that I am here is to serve and to contribute. And that in this way, I serve myself, I serve the divine, and I serve all the generations to come.
So what I'm really curious about is you speak of that place as being deeper than our mind, right? And beyond trauma. And you work with, people in groups, you work with people directly. And do you find that that's some place that is already existing deep within us, or is that something that is sort of like something that we need to strive for, that we need to emulate? Where does that kind of experience become embodied, and how?
Well, my experience is that it's there all the time. It's our core, it's our essence, it's actually who we are. It's just covered up with trauma. It's covered in layers of untruths. And so when we have the courage to feel the trauma and process and start living our lives differently, because when I work with people, it's, there's a lot of exploring childhood and father wounds and mother wounds and learning how to mother and father the inner child within us. But there's also a really key part that is that you have to live your life differently. You have to start doing things that honor you, that communicate to yourself that you love and honor yourself deeply. Because the story that we were all born into, through being born into what I would call a profoundly sick society, to parents that are full of generations of trauma and are essentially traumatized children in adults' bodies, as the majority of the population is, then we're born into this story of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, because our needs can't possibly be met in that context from those people that haven't learned the truth of love and that are also immersed in a trauma soup themselves. So we have to do things differently, have to live our lives differently. It's all about congruency, that our thoughts, that our words, and that our actions are all in alignment with love and truth to the best of our ability in each moment that we live.
And another aspect that I'm curious to explore is I also know you work with women, right? So it's not just sacred masculinity for men, right? There's also something that is there for each of us, right? We each have this sense of, or that energy of, or however you would describe it. Is it an archetype? Is it an energy? What is that really, right? But we all have both.
Yes.
And so perhaps you could speak to that really. Well, how does it express in each of us, and is it differently expressed in the feminine embodiment and in the masculine embodiment? How does that work?
I think that my experience is, if you like, then this is very sort of like broad, is that a man will lead with truth. The man is primarily in his pure state the embodiment of truth, and a woman for me is primarily the embodiment of love. But we are both. We are both love and truth. Sometimes it's easier to talk about the masculine and feminine qualities as yin and yang, just because it gets confused with gender and being a man and being a woman. But a man has a masculine and feminine essence, and a woman has a masculine and feminine essence. Now, what I find, the majority of my one-to-one work is with women, about 80-90%. The majority of them that come, they have deep father wounds, they have been abused, raped, had terrible experiences with men, and they seem to come because they're attracted to having an experience of what it feels to be safely in the company of a man, in a man that is in balance, in a man that wants nothing from them, that is just there in service of them, which happens so rarely in society because the majority of us are clamoring to have our childhood needs met unconsciously still, and we're just also needy. So what most commonly shows up with women, and the area that I focus on a lot, is speaking their truth, because this is kind of like, the masculine energy. It's the projection, it's being proactive, it's about I am worthy, I have something to say. And the second part that usually comes in an awful lot is about being assertive with boundaries. These are the two aspects that women and men struggle with, and this arises from our childhoods, and this the sort of adage, children should be seen and not heard, and all that sort of stuff. So what tends to happen is when we start focusing on speaking our truth and asserting our boundaries, because life is the workshop, these opportunities to practice these are being presented to us all the time. I just show the people where these opportunities are, and as they practice and develop these, they start to feel more confident, and the masculine starts to integrate inside them, and this kind of strength starts to rise. And then in that space, and in that safe, stronger space, they kind of relax, and then any other trauma or anything else that needs to come up to be cleared can come up. I used to be quite confused that women were always crying in my sessions and thinking I'm doing something wrong, but I realized that I'm doing something right. They feel safe enough to open and express and clear. And then when that masculine energy is on the way, the feminine, you don't need to do anything with the feminine energy. I sometimes use the metaphor of a trellis that we use to grow roses up. You have a wooden framework and gaps in between. The masculine is like the trellis, is like the wooden bits, and the feminine is like the spaces in between the trellis. You have to have the spaces for something beautiful to grow up the trellis. If it's all wood, nothing can grow up it. And when the wood and the trellis is sorted, then the feminine just arises in the safety, in the container of that masculine energy. That's my experience, Alex.
So beautiful. And I really want to acknowledge the core of what you shared, right? That it's not about gender, and this topic could be uncomfortable, right, for so many. And I really like how you encapsulated that core being speaking the truth, the masculine expression, and love as the feminine expression, and that we could look at the society and the development of society, whatever right or wrong perception it is that we have had toxic masculinity and patriarchy, whether that's true or not, that's a different conversation. But an expression of that would be, in a way, suppressing that expression of truth, regardless of what parts of the society we're talking about. It doesn't have to be men and women, right? It could be different communities. And so that expression of masculinity, therefore, is then allowing those communities or individuals to really say what's true to them, to state their boundaries sometimes, right? It's often about that, and to express their needs. And that's really what the sacred masculinity is all about in a nutshell, would you say?
Yeah, it's a large part of it, Alex. Yeah, it's a large part of it. And of course, you know, you can take this and run with it if you want to, but of course it becomes very interesting when we start looking at the pandemic and masks and and people's truth being suppressed. It's like this crazy idea that there is one truth, and I believe that in some ways, yeah, there is a divine truth, and yet at the same time we each have our own truths, and our own truths will shift and differ from moment to moment. What is true in one moment, what is a clear no in one moment, be a maybe a clear yes, come in another. They can both be truth, but this kind of ideal of monopoly of truth, and that our own truth isn't worthy unless it's aligned with the narrative or the general consensus, is pretty dangerous and concerning. And you can kind of see how there's potential for further eroding of that masculine energy of speaking our truth, speaking from my heart. What I have to say is of value. I always say to my clients, don't worry too much about how people respond when you speak your truth. Many people won't like it when you speak your truth. They won't like it because it reminds them of how scared they are to speak theirs. And they won't like you to speak your truth, for a whole range of other reasons potentially as well. But we speak it nevertheless, because one of the reasons why we don't speak our truth is that we're scared that love will be withdrawn. That's what happens when we're children. It's like if you don't say what mummy and daddy want you to say, then you're in the bad books, then you're naughty, then you're punished. And so we integrate that if we speak what we feel, even if it goes against the narrative of those around us, that love will be withdrawn. So that's what's used unconsciously to stop us from speaking.
Mm, thank you for that. And let me just briefly acknowledge some of our viewers here. So Barbara Peterson is sharing that Miguel and you, Jody, have a great deal of knowledge, understanding in common. I love the trellis image, structure and spaces. Can't have one without the other.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
And so perhaps let me reintroduce then Jody into our space. We already introduced her for the opening ceremony, but just in case for those tuning in a little bit later on, or if you're watching this as a separate clip in the recording. So Jody Redhawk is a medicine woman, a shaman, a teacher of evolutionary consciousness, speaker, and author, and it is honored to have you as well here in the conversation. And this is very much like a dynamic exploration of this, so feel free, of course, to chip in.
Thank you, Alex. And wow, Miguel, love you, brother. Thank you. Aho, mahalo. I was listening to you. And by the way, Alex, thank you for moderating. Your questions are just perfect, and to bring in the conversation and the energy for exactly the purposes of why we are here. And Miguel, I was listening to you and I'm just sitting here cracking up. I'm like, well, I don't need to speak. That was, thank you. Thank you. Yes. So wonderful. So wonderful. I was loving listening to you. And so much of what Miguel said, Alex, is what I would have said as well. And our paths are very similar in what we are doing, my brother, and how we are administering to our people, to the children of Mother Earth, and in assisting them to heal and to grow and to learn, or as I will often say, remember, because as we all know here, and as some of our family who are listening will know, and for others it will be new information, we already know everything that we're talking about, because our soul is one with source, is source, creator, God, divine masculine, divine feminine. We already actually have all of that information in our soul. However, when we incarnate into these bodies, especially at this time on the planet, we also give ourselves amnesia. So I often will say that, you know, the true meaning of the word teacher is rememberer, because we are helping each other to remember what our soul already knows. And so from there, I would like to share too that Miguel, when you said, you know, the journey from the head to the heart, I especially laughed and, you know, was just holding so much joy and love, because that is one of the things that I have said probably the most to people that I have the blessing and the privilege of working with, is exactly that, is the longest journey that any of us will ever make is from here, from the head to the heart, and then coming together in unity in that space. So I really just loved that when you spoke to that. And I also I wanted to comment on, I loved how you're sharing in words of divine masculine, divine feminine, truth, and love. And truth being the active principle of, as you were saying, I also very much equate divine masculine is yang, right? And divine feminine being yin. And the divine masculine energy, the energetic frequency of divine masculine, yes, being truth, or as I also will say, is light, right? So the light carries the truth, the light carries the essence of codes and information and frequencies. And within that is love, the divine feminine. And the hi. So I will pause for a moment, because it was so funny, Miguel, when you were speaking in particular. Yes, she wants to say hi. This is the divine feminine in a cat body.
Ah, lovely.
Good job. This is Faith, and she is a very special kitty because of, well, for many reasons, we're all special, right? But she came to me, she was a rescue, and I happened to be in New York City visiting my sister, and we happened to go into one of the people that she was working with, the place where they rescue animals, and Faith was right there, and she had to come home with me. And she came with the name Faith, which I share this brief little story because it's relevant, because part of our role here on the planet, especially as those of us who came here as light workers to help our family to wake up, it takes a lot of faith, doesn't it? It takes a lot of dedication and faith, and continually bringing us back to our heart space, and bringing us back to the divine masculine, the divine feminine, source, creator, Mapa. I don't know if you were with us, Miguel, but in the beginning I was saying to Alex and to our family that my pet name for source, God, creator, goddess is Mapa, because our love and our light, where we come from, is both our divine mama and our divine papa. So I will lovingly say Mapa. And so, yes, love everything that you spoke to about divine feminine, divine masculine. And yes, Barbara, the trellis, oh my goodness, That was such a beautiful visual, Miguel. I mean, I saw it. I totally, as you were speaking of it, I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. So beautiful. So really encompasses the qualities of the energy of, yes, divine masculine and divine feminine, you know, in that never ending infinity symbol, the weaving, the harmonizing, the unity of the never ending flow of these two energies, which, yes, Alex, you also spoke to really becoming clear on it's not about God, a man, or a goddess, a woman, that divine feminine, divine masculine is about remembering that this is all part of all of us. It's an energy. And as you spoke to, beautiful brother Miguel, it doesn't matter what body we are in. We all have divine masculine energies, yang energies. If, you know, a lot of people are familiar with yin and yang. We all have divine feminine energies, the yin. And one of the things that I think is the most powerful for us as incarnated beings here upon Mother Earth, and I speak for myself from my own personal experience, I feel that one of the most beautiful and powerful pieces of medicine, wisdom, that I have received on my walk is walking that journey of the head to the heart and really waking up to, I'm in the body of a woman, but I have the energy of the divine masculine. I have the energy of the divine feminine. And it's not a fight. I don't need to be this or that. I am both. And for me, that was one of the most freeing experiences to revel in and to celebrate that I have both of those within me, and that I can call upon those energies and those frequencies and that love and that light, which actually brings me to I wanted to bring in our ancestors, because it also links into something that you had spoken to, Miguel, actually regarding the trellis and the roses. As a medicine woman and a conduit for our family on the other side to bring messages to the people, I work very specifically with our ancestors and with the grandmothers. And as they came in our opening with a medicine prayer, a medicine song, I actually, very often I will end up crying when I am bringing in their songs, because it is so filled with so much love that it almost is overwhelming in the good way. And one of the things that I often share with people is that what is so beautiful about when these medicine songs come through from our family, our ancestors, is that it most of the time it's the grandmothers, because we're working with really nurturing our family right now, right? Really nurturing, helping people to heal, to grow and to learn. And in order to grow and to learn, first we must nurture, as you spoke to, Miguel, doing the inner child healing. And I do a lot of work with that as well, because there's most people on our planet today have wounding from childhood. So we have to go to the point of origin and, you know, right, go to 0 point and then do the healing there and then move forward. So our grandmothers are the ones who are most of the time wanting to come through with the medicine songs, our grandfathers, the Divine Masculine. See, I'm going to tear up because it's such an amazing experience, because the grandfathers, the ancestors, the chiefs and the elders are, they're behind the grandmothers, as the grandmothers are bringing their medicine song with so much love and so much nurturing and comfort. They want to comfort us. They want to bring in that mothering, that divine mother. And the grandfathers, they're standing behind the grandmothers with, like, oh my God, such, the tree anchored, rooted energy of the cosmos, holding that space for the message, the frequencies, the codes from the beautiful grandmothers to come through and be delivered for the people. And I wanted to share that as well, because it links in with our whole conversation about divine masculine, divine feminine, and how truly beautifully interwoven the two energies are. So there.
Thank you so much. And I really want to acknowledge something that was obvious, at least from where I am, where we started with a conversation here with Miguel, with very much speaking into that truth, right? Into that deep, embodied, intense experience, right? About our, I guess, coming out of our shells, right? And standing for our truth. And then when Jody, you came in, there was that embodiment of love, right? Just kind of that acknowledgement and the acceptance and really kind of enveloping. And so this was just such a beautiful dynamic. I love that so much. And here it is, right? Like how it works together in this beautiful harmony, that it wasn't some kind of clash or a conflict or a struggle, right? It was very much this coming together in this unified whole. Thank you so much for that dynamic.
Mm. Thank you, Alex.
So I would love to come back to a few things with Miguel as well, with what he shared about earlier. But before that, let me just acknowledge as well our core intention for today that we're offering here in the Global Unity Festival space, which is our collective synchronized practices, which are slowly coming up now on the platform and in our Earth Elders group. So you have the link on your screen. So I think 3 of our hosts are starting their events in 3 minutes. So feel free to join them. And obviously this is going to be also in recording, so you're welcome to tune back and complete watching this later, or of course stay with us and join for the peak itself, when each of our hosts will be moving into the uplifting practices specifically, and by then we'll complete our conversation and we'll really honor the space. So we'll go off air in a way here with some meditative music in the background whilst all the other hosts are hosting their events. So that's what's coming up in our space in the next few moments. So yes, Miguel, so you spoke about speaking the truth, and on the one hand being in a way scared of what speaking that truth may bring upon us, right? The reactions that we may experience. And on the other side, I wonder, well, how do we know that that truth is the truth? That's not just yet another kind of expression of the unconscious patterns or some survival mechanisms. And how do we then be with that potential reaction and the fear of that reaction? So kind of both of those dynamics at the same time. Perhaps you can speak to that.
Yes, Thank you, and yeah, thank you, Jody, for your contribution and your beautiful words, and yeah, just yeah, in a way, what the feminine does, is it seems like the masculine is so much about the sort of practical and the structure and the survival and root and getting your shit together. And then when that stuff is all sorted, then it's like the feminine is the beauty and the creativity and the ornate and the yeah, so much of that energy. So yeah, it's a beautiful weaving. It's a beautiful weaving. Um, yes, speaking your truth. It's as I said. I think it's not that we expect to be speaking the truth. It's just that we're speaking our truth in each moment. And I think we need to start from the place really of recognizing that our minds are not fully our own. I would go so far as to say that, until we've really got deep into our work, pretty much every thought, word, or action is either consciously or unconsciously informed by our trauma. So it's not actually ours. But when we're speaking our truth, all we're doing is speaking what's true to us in the moment. My guidance around that is to speak as best as possible to make sure that that truth is arising from a place of love, rather than it's arising from a place of, I'm going to try and wound this person, or, a projection, or it's coming from a loving space. And then if you are speaking from a loving space and you are making it clear that this is just my truth in this moment and I need to share this in order to honor myself, then how the other person responds doesn't matter too much. But ideally, they will honor that. And that when we speak our truth, it gives them permission to speak their truth. And even though sometimes people don't like what you say at the time when you speak your truth, then what tends to happen is that those people will fall away out of your life, because actually your connection with them is more about them than it is about the reciprocity of the connection. So you may find yourself with a few less friends when you start speaking your truth, but I would say that that connection wasn't terribly deep anyway. It's a good way of sorting out the wheat from the chaff. Do you just have fillers, friends who just we just validate our own lies and distortions and so on, or is a true friend somebody that says, hold on, I don't see it like that, I don't like that, or I don't like what's going on here. It is really about this the child in us that is deeply, there's a deep habit that says that when I speak my truth, that love will be withheld or will be withdrawn. So when those times happen, the opportunity is for us to wrap ourselves, what I call, in a cloak of compassion, that we have honored ourselves, although we may have been rejected and love may have been withdrawn, or the illusion of love, because that's not really love. That's the scraps from the table. But then when we have honored ourselves, then that's enough. And that although the other person, it may seem as if love has stopped coming from there, it gives us the invitation to find the true source of love, which is an inside job. It's always inside. So it's, although it may be uncomfortable, it's just another reminder that everything comes from within. The world teaches us that everything is outside, that we need more of this, we need a different partner, we need a different job, we need a bigger car. It's all outside. We're programmed to believe it's outside so that we're very good consumers. But the truth is, it's all inside. We can only love another to the extent that we love ourselves. And I believe that that's the reason why so many of us light workers were born into homes where there was so little love. My mother died when I was 7 months old, and there was very little love. She was ill. when she was carrying me and she was ill for the first 7 months that I was with her. I was with an auntie for about a year who looked after me for a little while, and then I was taken from her. So that was 2 mothers that I lost before I was 2 years old. And then my stepmother had a baby of her own and became very violent and abusive and angry towards her stepchildren and treated her own child very differently. So what I learned was that this was a gift. This was a gift to show me that love does not come from a woman. Love does not come from outside. Love does not necessarily come from mummy. It was like I had a little taste of this love and then it was taken. And I understand now when I look back over the trail of my life that it was teaching me that love is an inside job. It comes from within. Yeah. I can't remember what your original question was, but
Yeah,
that
no,
may have covered it.
absolutely, absolutely. And I really love how you really gave here the secret recipe in a way, right? Because to speak the truth, we need to wrap it in love. Right? So it's kind of like they're inseparable. So it's not like, hey, here's my expression of my masculine, my yang energy, and here's now the expression of the yin energy. Well, it's really intertwined, and it's really when they're both wrapped up together with each other, that's when they're most potent. So that's so beautiful. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I hadn't quite seen that as quite so clearly, that little bit. Yeah, it feels to me, I often call it the sacred masculine energy is a gentle strength, and it's the same really. The divine feminine is the same, isn't it? A woman who embodies that balance and has a commitment to the sacred union within her own heart, then she embodies that gentle strength as well. Yeah.
And I'm also curious to explore a little bit. Well, you say love is an inside job. So is it really just a matter of sort of transforming and doing away with those layers that have accumulated over time, and there it is on the golden platter? Or is there something more really to tap into that deeper sense of inner love so that we can have that solid, strong foundation to be independent, interdependent ultimately, but in our first step, independent? How do we reach that state and sense?
Yeah, I can't tell you about the end of that process. I can only tell you as far as I've got, and where I am is that there is a growing sense of love. Sorry, my body energy moves and that twitches a little sometimes. Yeah, so what did I just say then?
The energy moving in your body and really kind of tapping into that love.
Yeah, the love. What I'm finding is that I just have this sense of just compassion and love everywhere that I go. Everybody increasingly, it's just this embodying of you're all my brothers and sisters, and you're all reflections of me, and we're all different versions of the one divine. So there's this sense of just compassion and just not being able to contain the reverence and the sacredness and the fragility of this human experience. Jody sort of spoke to it briefly, just that your eyes, you just overflow, your tears just start flowing from this place of beauty and bliss. That definitely just arises from inside. It's not coming from anywhere inside. But a big part of this journey is, and this is kind of like being a layer on top of, what some people would call a challenge, or what I choose to call a gift. This story that the opposite sex is the source of love. it's so deeply programmed into our society, this kind of romantic concept of love, this Hollywood version that another will complete me. And the further I go down this path, the more I see that actually what we call love in our society is for the most part codependency and trauma bonding. So there's this massive distraction where we're, you know, and I've had that massively because I've had this real strong inner child thing of I want mummy, I want closeness, I want skin, I want warmth, I want the safety of the mother that I didn't get very much when I was little. So that gets equated with sex and intimacy and all that sort of closeness with woman. And it's a red herring. It's like, you know, a man will keep going for that, keep heading for that in this kind of, well, why isn't this working? Because that programming is so deeply built into us, you know, all the love songs, all the marketing, all the Hollywood movies, etc. So we have to delete that programming and see that that is false. And prioritize, as I have found myself, as I undo that, you know, a lot of it is actually the objectification and the sexualization of woman. But as I continue to do that and clear that, what becomes the priority is that my relationship, my love affair is with the divine. It is primarily with the divine, and whether that is you know, represented by myself, by this body, that I am the divine in human form. I am the voice of the divine. I am the hands of the divine. I am the heart of the divine. Or whether you know, it arises in a different way. But yeah, love. It comes from within, and it's almost like you have to kind of block all the places where you're leaking and you're looking for love and expecting it to come from, you know, it's like, you know, for me, for so many years, it was like, I want love to come from there. I want it to come from that woman. And actually, I'm so focused and obsessed with this that I'm not seeing and feeling that love is everywhere, all around me. All the love from my clients, all the love from my family, from my friends, from the community where I live, the love that I feel from the land, the love that I feel in my body when I drop in and when I get still. Love is there all the time, but it's kind of like, you know, if we're focused on looking in the wrong place, then we don't see that it's everywhere all around us. And we can't feel it because we built these walls around our hearts when we were little, because we weren't able to fully feel the full extent of the pain that we were exposed to at the time. So it's this commitment to keep stepping into the fire, stepping into these uncomfortable places and feeling now what we weren't able to fully feel then. Dissolving the layers around the heart, which then allows us to feel more, because it's like, you know, most people are living in this narrow band because their hearts are so closed down, so covered in layers of trauma and pain and conditioning. But as we clear, we expand them out and we become this full spectrum, this wider spectrum of a human being. And my experience is that I feel and experience sensations and energy and things in my body that it just feels like, how can my body contain this? And it gets stronger and more, and you kind of realize that, oh, that's what being asleep was, and this is what waking up is. You know, initially there's no contrast to kind of like compare to, but as what I call the magic starts happening and our powers and our technologies and the energy starts flowing through us, then we realize, oh my God, you know, I was just crawling around in the dirt, and there is so much here to experience and to feel and to be. Yeah, I'll pause there.
I love that, and I really love to hold these paradoxes and dichotomies. And I first spoke to removing things, right? Like, and through the removal of those layers, we get to that core. But you also added the other side of it, which is actually plugging in the leaks, right? Where we're leaking that experience. So it's really very much about both both dynamics there. And I think in what you were sharing, the essence there is that love is all around us, right? In so many different forms and expressions, in the nature and in the communities and in our families. And it's very much recognizing that and perceiving that and becoming aware of that. And then really we can step into that experience and supplement our truth telling with the love, from that space.
Yeah, and that we are love. It's like it's, when we clear the heart, we allow ourselves to feel that in ourselves, and we also allow it to, to come in from externally. It's like, we build these walls to stop the pain because there was too much pain, but there's no sort of one-way valve that just stops the pain but allows the love in. If we have to have the courage to feel the pain, to feel the full spectrum of what it is to be human. When I began this journey, I thought that waking up was that everything just got brighter and more beautiful and more loving and sweeter. But what I've realized is our capacity to experience bliss and joy and love is equal to our capacity to be in the discomfort, to be in the fire, to be with the pain. It's like the two ingredients are needed for the alchemy, it appears. That's what changes us from coal to diamonds. The pain is just as necessary. It's a key ingredient, and that's why so many people struggle on this journey, because again, we've been domesticated, we've been softened, and we've been told that when there's pain or discomfort, to avoid it, to addict it, to numb it, to distract. And actually, the medicine is always to step into it. Well, not always. You need to know what you're doing and make sure you're coming from a clear place. But when you're aligned and you understand the process of what's happening, it's like, okay, this is uncomfortable. I need to stop distracting myself, and I need to step towards this and be with it and feel it. So, pain is a really essential ingredient in this. That's why there was pain in all the initiations of the young men. But we've lost our valuing of that, and our understanding that pain is medicine when it's used in the right way, when it's administered with love.
Which is a whole other area, right? That we can sort of explore, the rites of passage and the structures and as you say, the intentional bringing of the pain into that space, right? Like, yeah, I really love that. And yeah, we could perhaps spend a whole other conversation just on that. So as we are now drawing to the close of our conversation, nearing to the peak of our wave, we have about 12 minutes or so left. There's one thing that I would like to explore, switch gears a little bit. So just before I do that, I wonder if there's anything you want to speak to, Jody, before we take that next step.
Am I okay?
Yeah,
I
you're
have my mic.
on.
Yeah. Thank you, Miguel, and Alex. Again, just beautiful. I couldn't help but notice, the beautiful orchestration from our divine feminine as we are talking about the balance of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And Miguel, you were speaking to love, and again, we speak so much of the same language for our purpose for being here and helping our family. A lot of times when people ask me, what I do, what do I teach, what's my religion, I say self-love, because that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line to healing, is coming home and loving ourselves as though we are our own child. That level of absolute, true, infinite love, unconditional love. The journey home, again, from here to here. And when you were speaking about loving yourself, and you were saying something regarding the mother. Oh, I just, how we misplace what we're looking for, because if we have not addressed that wounding from our childhood, we're always looking to replace that with whatever is out here, right? Until we come home into our heart and we do our healing work. So I couldn't help but notice it was so funny when you were speaking to that, like, where's mommy? I need love. My cat Faith, embodying the divine feminine, was sitting on the top of my chair. And I haven't looked at her for most of this time. I happened to look at her, and right when you said that, she looked squarely at the camera. like like the great mother, coming in to say, I am here, my children, I am here with you. And again, the beauty of the balance, right? Miguel, you're speaking, my brother, divine masculine, and here I am embodying the divine feminine, and here she comes again. And my kitty sitting behind me, bringing the divine feminine, the love, the nurturing. So I just wanted to kind of bring that to everyone as a moment of how our beloved spiritual family and team of love and light on the other side are always with us, and showing us in those little ways, like, yep, I'm here, with you. um, and then I'll wrap up real quick because I know, Alex, we're getting ready to move to the next phase. I also wanted to bring in, yes, strong foundations, the very theme of why we are here today, to bring strength to each other and to our family, so that we are coming from that strong foundation, so that we can move forward in our life powerfully for not only ourselves, because we all know this, the energy, the frequencies that we produce go out there into the light web system within Mother Earth, around Mother Earth. And then those frequencies will either help to uplift or help to fall down. So what we are doing is producing a frequency that others can receive, as we are here in this energy for bringing in strong foundations. I can't really think of what is more encompassing of a very powerful foundation to stand upon than truly understanding the balance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, that we all have that. It is all part of source. It is part of God, goddess, creator, creatrix, spirit. It is that essence from where we come. It is love. It is light. And so to stand firmly in our body, knowing I am, right? Those very powerful words. I am. I am Divine Mother. I am Divine Father. I am love. And I stand upon that as my foundation to love first myself in strength, in balance, and in power, that I may then serve and love others. Tahoe.
Oh, I mean, that's such a beautiful, really completion. I feel like, there's no need to go beyond that. Thank you so much.
My joy.
So, there's one thing that really stood out from what you were sharing, though, Jody, that experience, that longing for the mother, that longing for the father, in a way becomes resolved, becomes complete when we step into being the father and being the mother, right? And I don't speak here about, having children, right? I speak here of I guess the archetype, the embodiment of that, the energy of that. And I guess it's when we step up to that game of being the mother, being the father ourselves, that's also in a way requiring us to heal, right, and to experience that. So I guess that's part of the maturing process, and that's I believe, an aspiration, I guess, to strive for.
It seems to me that it's the way out of the matrix. Essentially, it's the way out of the matrix, you know, because whether it's intentional or not, we won't go into that, but the human beings have been kept you know, as children in adults' bodies. When your emotional needs aren't met, then your emotional development is stunted and you stay at that place. And so as children in adults' bodies, you're still looking outside for the authority. You're still looking for mummy and daddy to give you permission to tell you what to do. And that becomes the government. And so, you know, people can't think for themselves. That's why we've got this, you know, situation that we're in at the moment. But it is that becoming the mother to yourself and becoming the father to yourself. And that way that you stop looking externally, you know, for guidance. It was, you know, it's such a massive part. You can't claim your sovereignty while you are still full of trauma, because you are still acting from that place of the child. And the child is narcissistic. The child is, I'm the center of the universe. It's all about me. And so that's why the world is in the situation it's in, because all of the majority of men and women are children in adults' bodies, and so they're not thinking about the generations to come. It's just about their immediate gratification, which is what the child is all about. They say, and maybe Jody can speak to this, but it was so powerful when I heard, you know, that the Native American Indians, that when they came together in council, that they would look at how the laws and decisions that they make would affect the generations, you know, their people in with 7 generations to come. Now, if you compare that with our system of so-called democracy, where it's 5 years of government office, it's a pantomime. You can't. How can you sort anything out in 5 years when we just have parties that just go backwards and forwards and undo what the previous one? It's like, how can the majority of the population not go, this doesn't work? It's just a performance to pretend that there's some sort of democracy. But a child can't see that. A child is hoodwinked, is baffled by, you know, by the complexity of it, and doesn't go there. But as you come back to your sovereignty, you just start seeing all these things all over the place that, like, this doesn't add up. This just doesn't make sense at all. This isn't. How can it possibly be said that these people have the people's interests at heart? But as a child, you can't see that because you're too terrified because if the government aren't in control, then it's like, oh my God, there is no safe container. There's no other mummy and daddy. So that's even more terrifying than being governed and led by people who don't have our best interests at heart. So this becoming the mother to ourselves and becoming the father to ourselves is key. You know, we can't get out of where we are until we reclaim our sovereignty. We move from being dependent to being independent, but then we have to move to interdependence, as you spoke to, Alex. But you can't be interdependent while you're still trapped in trauma and you're still a child in an adult's body. You will still be all about, you know, you'll feel like the pinnacle is your independence, which is again what society encourages, as if independence is some wonderful thing. Actually, independence has just created so much separation and division. It is a step in the path of maturity, but it's not the end of the line.
Well, you've opened up a whole other area there again, Miguel, and I feel we could really keep exploring these themes for the months to come, perhaps. And of course, as I've mentioned before, this is a monthly festival, and very much welcome to join us again, Miguel. And as we're drawing to the close now, and one of the things that I wanted to bring in, which actually we naturally arrived at, is to look at, well, what's the possibility after we really tap into that, our deeper sacred masculine and feminine, you know, what's available to us? Because we started, you know, quite rightly so, with really deep diving into what's in the way, you know, what's accumulated on those layers, and it's when we remove them we can step fully into the possibility. And actually I feel we address that, because that possibility that we step into is that mother and father that we become. And when we step into that, we can become more proactive participants in our communities and in our societies and in the governance of our greater spaces, right? Beyond our local communities, in the politics, perhaps, right? And with that maturity coming into that space, we can actually create that thinking, multiple generations ahead. And I feel that's what's possible when we really tap into the depths of our sacred masculinity and femininity, really to have that strong foundation. So I think we've really completed that whole story beautifully in our conversation. So yeah, thank you. And yeah, feel free to just share some last thoughts. And yeah, and in a moment I'll share what is planned for our program ahead. So thank you, Miguel and Jody, for our exploration here.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Miguel. I'm so glad that we had this time. It's very beautiful, very powerful. And for a closing comment, I would just like to come back to Miguel, what you brought up, and I touched upon as well. And Alex, you just did a moment ago, and that is, yes, the most important thing that all of us can do if we have family, friends, our community that we want to support and uplift and bring strength to and healing to our world is mothering and fathering ourselves. Yes, exactly. This is the core. You spoke to that, Miguel. Same with me. The core of our work, my work with other people, with our sisters and our brothers, is helping them to arrive at that place of you are your own mother, you are your own father. If you did not receive that in childhood, then it's time for you to give that to yourself, because that's where the power comes from, because we heal those wounds. And then that's when we can really, truly make a powerful difference. When we can hold ourselves and love ourselves like we are our own daughter or son, and we are our own parents, then we can love anyone powerfully and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
I love you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you for those words, yes, and thank you for your work and for what you bring. Thank you, Alex, for your part. For it's a wonderful festival, and my closing comment is a really short story about strong foundations. I was living on the road when I was a young man, and I was working on an island off the west coast of Scotland, and there was an old croft, and my job was to put in the foundations of the croft. Now, the croft was already built, but they never used to put foundations on because there were such big, broad walls, stone walls, and often built onto the bedrock, but there was some subsidence. So my job was to go around the croft and to dig out sort of 4-foot square pieces of earth from underneath the walls. And in that way, when the earth was taken out, I infilled it with concrete. So then I would leave a space and then dig out another 4 foot and then fill it with concrete. And it became really clear to me, later on my journey of healing and so on, that that's what I was doing, and that's what most of us are doing. Ideally, we are born into a loving, truthful world, into a beautiful society that is in alignment with love and truth, but we're not at the moment. So the good news is that we can put the foundations in later. Those foundations are those emotional needs, or that love, that support, that security that ideally we receive when we're little. But if we didn't receive it, then that's the work that we're doing now. We're putting in the foundations after the building has been erected. We're adults, but we can still go back and infill and put those foundations in. We can meet those needs for ourselves, as Jody was saying, by learning to be the mother to ourselves and the father to ourselves. So yeah, just a little bit of hope wherever we are on our journey, however old we are, it's never too late to start putting in the foundations and becoming the mother and father to yourself, and taking care When you're scared, when things are difficult, it's nearly always your little child, the inner child, that just needs some love and support and security. So yeah, blessing all our journeys back to sacred union and blessing the coming of the new earth. Aho.
Oh, beautiful message of hope, Miguel. Thank you so much for joining us in this space today, and I look forward to perhaps co-creating with you in the future. Thank you for joining us.